Good evening, everyone. Bonne soirée à tous et bienvenue à cette rencontre du Comité de dérogation pour la Ville d'Ottawa. Welcome to this Committee of Adjustment for the City of Ottawa hearing. So, as you know, the City of Ottawa has a Committee of Adjustment that's a quasi-judicial tribunal. That's what we are. We're appointed by City Council, and we make decisions on certain types of applications under the Planning Act, most notably minor variances and consent applications. So my name is Anne Tremblay, and I'll be chairing this hearing this evening. But with me tonight are my fellow panel members, Mr. Colin White, Ms. Kathleen Willis, Ms. Julia Markovich, and Mr. Scott Hindle. We have a full quorum here this evening. Also with us is our very capable and helpful staff, committee staff. We've got Mr. Garnett, who's our Deputy Secretary Treasurer, helping us this evening. We also have a number of coordinators, Ms. Emily Byers, Ms. Mandy Nguyen, and Mr. Alexander Jones. None of this would be possible without them helping us in the background, I can assure you. So just take note that this hearing is being video conferenced and live streamed on YouTube. If you'd like to get a copy of either the agenda after this hearing or want to view comments again that were maybe spoken during the hearing, you can have access to this video as well. So all you need to do is go to the city's webpage and there's the appropriate links there. So the Committee of Adjustment deals with really a narrow set of elements. Things that we can't really dive into are things that are not related to the minor variance applications or the consent applications that are before us. So if, for example, there's something about a proposal that is of concern to you, and is an element that may be a real issue from a neighborhood standpoint. If it's not part of the application, however, these are not things that this committee can talk about. We also do not talk about any, so we treat applications essentially as if there's no construction. So if there's been any illegal construction or prosecution for illegal construction, those are things that we don't get into as part of our discussions. Personal comments about either the applicants, owners, residents, anyone involved in these proceedings. So we will not tolerate any disrespectful behavior. So please keep that in mind. And also, if during the course of discussions, we determine that either additional minor variances are required or that greater variance or relief from the bylaw is required, in those cases, then we need to step those applications down to a future meeting of the committee. So depending on what the issue is, it may be an adjournment for several weeks or possibly just for a couple of weeks. So as part of the statutory declaration requirements under the Planning Act, each applicant is required to put to post a sign on their property that essentially talks about the proposal and offers anybody passing by an opportunity to see that there is something in fact proposed. So this committee can't hear any applications unless there is a declaration on file that essentially warrants that that a sign has been posted on the property. So, and since we've pivoted to the online, what we have chosen to do, which has worked out very well, is to do an oral solemn oath or affirmation. So we will be doing that for the applications that we are going to be dealing with this evening. So with respect to quorum, we haven't had an issue yet. We have a full quorum tonight. So I'm not going to go through the comments about that. I don't see that we will likely lose quorum. We don't have that long a meeting as well. So, so hopefully we'll get through our agenda for tonight. In terms of the process, so you saw essentially the agenda at the start of the meeting. So there's often deviation from the order for a number of reasons, whether it's because applications are more complex and deserve more time, and those we tend to try and put towards the end of the meetings, or whether or not there's adjournments on some of those, like some of those applications may actually require an adjournment and to come back to us. So we're gonna mix up the order a little bit tonight. So the other thing that we have adopted as part of the virtual world here is to fast track some applications that are relatively straightforward. So in those cases, we won't be asking for presentations. What we'll do is we'll jump right into questions from the panel in order to get additional clarification. And sometimes additional clarification is not required because we do have a chance to look at quite a bit of information before we even get before you at 6:30. So we've had a chance to look at a lot of information, and we don't necessarily need clarification on all applications. So if you find that things are going really quickly, chances are that's why. It's not because we, are moving ahead with incomplete information. It's just typically because we already have a very good sense of the application. So once we've had a chance to either get the presentation on complex applications or we've had a chance to ask our questions for clarification, we will then go to the public portion. And I do have a speakers list. Now, I think with the exception of maybe one application, I really don't have many people on other than representatives of the applicant, such as the agent or other parties who are in support or supporting that applicant. So in cases where I don't have anybody on that list, what I'll do is make just a general call out to anybody who's watching to see whether or not anybody would like to address the committee on an application. Once we've heard from everyone who wants to raise concerns or ask questions, whatever have you, we will then, and we may ask you some questions for clarification, by the way, as you're doing that. Once we're done all of that, though, the committee will close the public portion of the hearing and then deliberate on the information that we have. We may give the applicant and the agent a chance to respond to some of the issues and concerns that have been raised. And from that point on, we then make a decision. And as you know, most of our decisions are made orally this evening. We do get the written decisions that we do send out to anyone who has an interest and would like to have a copy of that decision. And normally that happens within 10 days of the hearing. So, but we can essentially deny or grant an application, again, adjourn an application orally. So you do get to know what the outcome of that application is right away. The only exception is when we reserve applications, and I don't see us having a need to do that this evening. So if you do have a concern with the decision that the committee has made, you do have an option to appeal our decision, and that's to the Ontario Land Tribunal, and there is a fee to do that and a process to do that. And if you would like more information on any of that, I'm sure there is information on our website. And if that's not sufficient for you, then please do reach out to committee staff. They're very helpful. So with that, then we have a number of items of business to take care of before we jump into our agenda. Does any member have any declarations of conflict of interest to raise? All right, for the record, I'm seeing no one on the panel with any declarations of conflict required. So that takes us to our minutes, and we have quite a number of sets of minutes to adopt. I think that sometimes I wonder, is that a good thing or a bad thing? But I can assure you it is a good thing because it means that people are reading their minutes and they wanted more time with them. So we have had a chance to look at these in depth, essentially. So the minutes in question that I'm going to ask for a motion to adopt and a seconder is the following: the April 6th, 2022, June 1st, June 15th, July 6th, July 20th, August 3rd, and August 17th. So do I have a mover to adopt?
Madam Chair, could I just ask a question, please?
Yes, you can.
I was absent for August 3rd, so I don't feel that I can have an opinion as to the approval of the minutes. So because if people were absent for one or two or more meetings, does that mean that they cannot move or adopt the whole package?
That's a good question, actually, Ms. Willis. I would say that you should abstain from adopting minutes that for meetings that you weren't you weren't present for. That would be my first inclination.
Yeah.
Is there anyone, so I guess the question becomes then, as part of the motion to adopt and the seconder, is there anyone who missed, other than Ms. Willis, that missed any of these meetings? I'm just trying to, okay, Ms. Markovich, Mr. Hindle. So, okay, so you know what we're going to have to do? I think, I think at least one person was away, at least for one of these meetings at some point. So rather than to do them as a batch, which I was really hoping to do, we'll do them one at a time. So for the April 6th, motion to adopt. Ms. Willis, seconded by Mr. Hindle. For June 1st, motion to adopt. Mr. Hindle, seconded by Mr. White, thank you. June 15th, motion to adopt. Ms. Willis, seconded by Mr. Hindle. July 6th, motion to adopt. Ms. Willis, seconded by Mr. Hindle. July 20th, motion to adopt. Ms. Willis, seconder, Mr. Hindle. August 3rd, motion to adopt. Mr. White, seconded by Ms. Markovich. And August 17th, motion to adopt. Ms. Markovich, seconded by Mr. Hindle. I was a little bit faster at it, I think. All right, okay. So with that, then the minutes, those minutes are adopted, which is excellent because we've been working on them for some time. And then after that, we're going to adjournment requests. So we have two that we're moving forward for adjournment this evening. The first one is for applications 2 and 3 for 1357 Kitchener Avenue. And I believe I'm looking for Mr. Segreto.
Good evening, Madam Chair.
Good evening, Mr. Segreto. So you're aware that there's a request for
Yes, I
an
am.
adjournment? Okay. And that there are potentially either revised minor variances or there is either revise the plans or additional minor variances. Which way are you going, Mr. Segreto?
I think we're going to try to revise the plans, but I'd like at least, I don't know if we can do it in 2 weeks, but I think 4 weeks would be a sufficient time.
All right. So Mr. Garnett, help me out here. The first meeting in October is the 5th.
That's correct, Madam Chair.
And how are we doing for that agenda?
The agenda is still under construction. I think we could accommodate another item.
All right, so if you're revising the plans, though, Mr. Segreto, you do understand that this isn't, you can't change your mind on this then, right? Because you wouldn't have a sufficient time for recirculation with October 5th.
My guess is, I think we should be safe here just in case we have to recirculate if we do ask for additional variances.
So in which case you'd be going to October 19th.
That's fine. I prefer
Okay.
that to be safe.
All right, sounds good then. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak either for or against this proposal to adjourn this application to October 19th? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody come forward. So with that, committee members, all those in favor of adjournment to October 19th? Okay, for the record, the decision is unanimous. So we will see you back in, well, we'll see you back, I'm sure, sooner than October 19th, Mrs. Segreto, but at least on this one, we'll see you in a few weeks.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. All right, the next application for adjournment is it's application 6 and 7, and it's for 285 and 287 York Street. And I believe I'm looking for on this one, Ms. Robichaud. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair. I am here on behalf of the applicants, Theo and Leanne Vanderberg. I believe you were given information in advance of the hearing that we would be requesting the adjournment and the reason for that.
Can you just state it for the record, please?
Yes, so we're requesting an adjournment in relation to condition 1 in the report from the city, which was to require that if the water service crossed the severance line, that the water service be changed so that it connected separately to each unit. We've had some discussions with the city that an alternative to resolving that issue would be to have an easement in favor of the city for servicing. And so we would like to amend the application to add the easement. So I guess there's two things we'd be doing. We'd be amending the application. We need to amend our plan to add a part for the easement. And then we need to amend our application to add a request for an easement in favor of the city of Ottawa for servicing the water and sewer service.
All right, that makes a lot of sense, Ms. Robichaud. Is there any questions for our agent? No, okay. So in that case, October 19th?
I think that would work. That should give us enough time to get the plan changed and do our amendment to the application. I suppose I should address, if I may, the issue of the minor variances as well. I could leave that to the next hearing, but I'm concerned, I mean, if the committee agrees with the report from the city of Ottawa, which is that the minor variances aren't needed because the setbacks fall within the Planning Act prior non-conforming provisions, then I don't need the minor variances. If the committee thinks we might need them, then I need to also amend the application to add a side yard and backyard setback, because I had missed putting those in the initial application.
So the committee doesn't provide advice as to whether or not you should accept that or not. But what I will say to you, though, is you're in a unique position because you've already paid for the application. You're already down that road, and you already need to amend the application in order to. So
amend it.
I would do a belts and suspenders kind of approach to this.
Yeah.
You're already, it's not going to make a difference to you. So
yeah, I'll just add it, and then if we don't need it, we don't need it. We'll deal with that at the proper hearing. Thank you.
Or, there's no harm in having an approval on something like that. I mean, and even if it's not needed, that's okay. But if you have the approval, you still have the approval, right? So you've got the amended standards, one way or the other.
That's true, yes.
So anyway, but I'll leave that to you.
Yes, thank you.
To think about. All right, excellent. Mr. Garnett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to mention, if we are entertaining the variance application, then there were variances that weren't circulated originally, that may be an issue when the application comes back.
What you mean financially? I mean in terms of cost or timing?
If the committee is, I guess clarity would be helpful, Madam Chair, if a recirculation is required in this case, either for the consent or the variances, if additional variances are now being introduced.
My understanding is we'll have to recirculate we'll have to post notices again because of the amendment on the consent, and we would deal with we would post the added minor variances at the same time.
Ms. Robichaud, I agree with you. I think that's what so the application does change in that we're adding easements, which was not part of the original request in the notice.
And so we
secondly,
have to recirculate for that.
I agree. And if you're going to do the recirculation, then you could easily add that added minor variance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we would just do both at the same time like we did with this initial application.
Exactly. All right.
So I'm assuming we're still okay for timing in that way.
I think October 19th still works, Mr. Garnett, for this application.
It could work, Madam Chair. Thank you. We would just ask if the applicants could have updated materials end of next week or shortly thereafter. We would still need the processing lead up time to circulate in advance of October 19th.
I believe that shouldn't be a problem at all.
All right, excellent. Okay, I'm going to go out to the public. Is there anyone in the audience who wants to speak either for or against this proposal to adjourn this application for York Street to October 19th. All right, I'm not seeing anybody come forward at all. So with that, committee members, all those in favor of the proposed adjournment. All right, for the record, the decision is granted unanimously. So good luck then, and we'll see you again in a few weeks.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you so much. All right, so that brings us back to our regular agenda, and we're going to start with application number 1, which is for 1982 Arch Street. And the agent that I have on record for that is Mr. Steves. Mr. Steves, I see you're there. Okay.
Hello. We're just
Hello.
there was a little delay when we got introduced.
No worries. It's true. It takes a little while to get you from one side to the other side of the of the wall for panel purposes. So, okay. Before we get into anything, I do have to read something to one of you. So who will be responding to the declaration?
Sure, I can do that.
All right. So just bear with me. I've got to read this too. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies, that it was there for the prescribed number of days prior to the hearing, and that it was at all times legible and visible for the entirety of that time? Do you either swear or affirm that to be true?
I affirm that to be true.
All right, perfect. We can now get into the nuts and bolts of the application. The first thing I'd like to start with is it's called a housekeeping amendment to your notice. So I'm not sure if you're aware, but we're going to change some of the wording. The wording's been proposed by planning staff. So at the and it's very minor. It's not something to that changes in any way the nature of the application. But what we're going to refer to, and I'm looking at, I'm trying to see if there's an easy place to start. So towards the end of the provision, in terms of the purpose, it says, whereas the bylaw requires a minimum, and now we're going to strike, combined side yard setback is a total of 3 meters with one no less than 1.2. We're going to replace that with the bylaw requires a minimum total side yard setback of 3.0 meters with 1 yard no less than 1.2 meters. Can you confirm that you accept that?
Yes.
All right, perfect. There's only another minor change to the notice. It's the reference to the zoning designation. So I think it's down as R10 when in fact it should be R10 rather than the letter. Can you confirm acceptance of that change?
Yes.
All right, perfect. Okay, so we don't need a presentation from you this evening. What we do need though is the panel members to ask their questions if they have any. So has anybody got anything they'd like to raise? Mr. White, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question of staff actually on the bylaw provision. I find this provision rather confusing the way it's worded in the zoning bylaw. So I'd like to get a clarification here. We have a south side yard provided on the property that is, I think it's 1.23 meters. And the requirement for the bylaw is that there's a combination, or the combined side yards must meet a minimum of 3.0 meters. Am I correct in understanding then that the side yard minimum to be provided on the north side where the proposed garage is located would be 3 meters minus the 1.23 on the south side, which means that it would actually on the north side be a requirement of 1.77 meters? Am I correct in that? In terms of the wording of the zoning bylaw?
For you, Madam Chair, yes, Member White, that is correct. So in terms of their deficiency, it would be the total 3 meters minus the minimum 1.2.
uh, 3 meters minus 1.23 because you've got 1.23 on the other side, right?
Yeah, yes, sorry, apologies, yes.
Okay. Secondly, Madam Chair, just in reviewing the application, I noticed on the plan of survey that was submitted that there is indicated through the existing garage, there's indicated a utility easement that which is actually encroached upon by the existing garage. I need clarification that the proposed new garage will not encroach upon that easement. Otherwise, I think we would require some release of that provision, that easement from the utility that holds the easement right there. Can I be satisfied that that utility easement's not encroached upon by the new construction that's proposed?
All right. Mr. Steves, Mrs. Steves?
Sure, yes. So, Madam Chair, we have secured approval from Hydro Ottawa to replace the existing garage, more or less in the same location. We consulted them with our planner and made some minor tweaks as well. So we're well within the limits in terms of distance from those overhead light duty wires that service our neighbor. So they've signed off. That was February 2001 that they provided their okay, and we have that on file.
Excellent. Mr. White? You're on mute, Mr. White.
Madam Chair, I wonder if we could get confirmation from our staff that has been submitted in support of the application.
Through you, Madam Chair, I don't have record of that. I can check the Hydro One comments that were circulated in a moment.
Yeah, I've seen the comments. They merely indicate what their clearance requirements are. I don't see any confirmation that the proposed construction meets their requirements. And the only reason I bring this up is because the survey of the existing property shows that easement quite clearly on the plan of survey.
Yeah. So if I may, we do have records of that and email correspondence, and they've provided us written approval. And in the package that I've seen that I believe the committee has received also references kind of their typical sort of clearances. And so they require 1.5 meters and we have 2.44 meters. So that's the geometry that we've been able to maintain with this proposed replacement of the existing structure, which again is basically in the same footprint, similar geometry as well. So there kind of is no change to the existing garage from what the proposed garage is. It's very similar. So they were quite satisfied with that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we should require the submission of the confirmation letter.
Just let me check one thing first, Mr. White. So I think I agree with you, but Mr. Garnett, I guess I just need to, we do have some standard conditions that go out that we never see, right? So they're more administrative conditions. And I'm wondering whether in those conditions, Mr. Garnett, is there any reference to ensuring that they adhere to the requirements of some of these technical agencies that have commented?
Madam Chair, there wouldn't be in connection with the minor variance application absent the consent process. And I've looked through the submissions just further to Mr. White's comment. Maybe the applicant could confirm, but I don't believe we have received that confirmation letter alluded to.
All right, in which case we can either impose a condition, we've been doing that with minor variances, or we can simply ask for a good faith provision of that documentation to committee staff and to Ms. Kelly, just for verification. Mr. White, would that be?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we just need confirmation that Hydro is satisfied with the construction as proposed.
So it's, how do we get that confirmation though? Do you want a condition, or do you want to just go with just requesting that information be provided and not formally impose a condition?
I think we've heard that it has already been obtained. I think simply providing that to staff before before our decision is final and binding, I think that should be sufficient.
All right, so Mr. and Mrs. Steves, would you kindly just provide that information to our staff to make sure they're aware now of our concerns, and if there's an issue, then we'll have to get back to our committee staff will have to have a discussion with you about that. Anything else? Any other questions at this point? Nope. All right. So I don't have anybody on our speakers list, so I'm going to just make a call out for anyone who may have an interest in this application, whether you're opposed or in support. You can speak to the committee, or if you just have questions. Now's your chance, and all you need to do is raise your hand. All right, I'm not seeing anybody come forward. Committee members, I think we're ready for a vote, if you'd like. So all those in favor of the application? All right, for the record, the application is granted unanimously. So good luck, and if you could get some of that, if you can get that letter to committee staff before the end of the week, that would be terrific.
I'll send it to Miss Kelly now.
All right, thank you very much. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to go to application number, number 8, which is for 2940 Baseline Road. And I am looking for Mr. Freeman. Right, good evening. Mr. Freeman is joining us. Mr. Bede from FOTAN.
Good evening, Madam Chair.
Good evening. So which of you is going to take the lead on this?
I will, I can swear.
Okay, so let me read it. I'm going to read it to you for the record so that you know what you're swearing or affirming. I know you know, but it's just for record purposes. So do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which it applies, that it was there for the prescribed number of days prior to the hearing, and that it was clearly visible and legible for the entirety of that time? Do you either swear or affirm?
I swear this to be true.
All right, perfect. Okay, so with that, then I'm just checking to see if we need any notice housekeeping changes, and I don't believe we do. I think we're kind of good on this. So with that, then no presentation required. We can go straight to questions from the committee then on this application. Mr. Hindle, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Maybe Mr. Freeman or Mr. Bede, if you could just quickly outline what the concern was from staff that previously led to them asking for an adjournment and how that's been rectified to date.
So there was the previous, when the application was previously heard, there were blanket easements for servicing, and then the specific easements for right-of-way and access and egress. There was concern that the blanket easements didn't provide enough clarity on the servicing, but we have provided a registered JUMA, joint use and maintenance agreement, for the servicing, and have confirmed that the blanket easement is more practical with the lawyer and the surveyor. And we confirmed that with staff, and they were satisfied with that.
All right, Ms. Scleroso, could you confirm that for us, please?
Hi, thank you, Madam Chair. Oh, my apologies, my camera's off there. Hi, thank you. So yes, the senior planner that I was working with on this file reviewed the JUMA on my behalf yesterday. I was off, and they confirmed that the JUMA was sufficient and outlined the blanket easement for servicing, and so that satisfied what we would have been looking for had we requested the adjournment.
All right, perfect, perfect. Like when that happens. Any other questions from the committee? No. All right, so with that then, I don't believe I have anybody registered to speak on this application. No, I do not. So I'm going to make a call out to the audience. Is there anyone who would like to speak either for or against this application for consent? All right, I'm not seeing anybody come forward in that case. So committee members, if you have no further questions, then we can move to a vote. So all those in favor? All right, okay, for the record, the application is granted unanimously. And there are a number of conditions, Mr. Freeman, you're aware of them. Okay, all right.
Yes.
In which case,
Thank
you very much.
you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to go to application number 9 and 10, which is for 1996 Cedar Lane Terrace. And I'm looking for Mr. Yalkotzi.
Good evening, Madam Chair.
Good evening. I'm going to need to read to you before we get started. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted on the property to which the application applies, that it was there for the prescribed number of days prior to the hearing, and that it was clearly visible and legible for the entirety of that time? Do you either swear or affirm that to be true?
I swear it, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. We also have a housekeeping amendment to your variance B. You're aware?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I'm just going to read it quickly just to get it into the record, and then you can confirm it and we'll move on. So to permit a reduced interior side yard setback of 1.2 meters, whereas the bylaw requires that an interior side yard setback on a corner lot when there is only one interior side lot required, where only a required minimum total interior side yard is prescribed, must be at least 50% of the required minimum total interior side yard setback.
Correct.
Sounds a little confusing, but if you've had a chance to digest that because you had it, excellent. I'm glad to hear that that's worked out. Okay, that's the end, I believe, of our changes. Can you just tell us a little bit about the differences in the minor variances that came through originally and what we're dealing with tonight?
Yes, Madam Chair. Effectively, we had two issues that we were dealing with. One, we were dealing with the garage facing not onto Cedar of the retained parcel, and so therefore we needed a minor variance for the garage, for the existing garage, two-car garage, to face onto the street that will also be where the severed parcel will also be facing. So we end up having the two driveways. The preferred and the requirement under the zoning bylaw is to get the driveways on the two properties. But because we're keeping the existing building there, we're obliged to keep that driveway there. It makes sense not to rip it up and try to switch it around. The second part was you were sort of alluding to it when you mentioned the conversation around the text. So it is complex in terms of how the rear yard is calculated, and we didn't quite correctly calculate it. We didn't require the variance for rear yard area because we actually have sufficient rear yard area. We'll almost have twice as much as we need due to the configuration of the existing building. So those were the reasons for the changes.
All right, so the fact that we've identified the interior I guess where the rear yard should be versus the interior, that actually essentially eliminated the need for minor variance A that was originally proposed, correct? I guess that's what you're saying. All right.
Correct, Madam Chair.
Okay, I think we're caught up. Any questions from the committee on either the consent application or the minor variance? Mr. White.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the minor variance, I wonder if staff could clarify. I mean, it talks about 50% of the required minimum total interior side yard setback. What is that dimension? What is the number rather than the percentage of whatever the total interior side yard setback is?
Hi, thank you, Madam Chair. So it's buried deep in the text of the report, but that's not a problem. So the total interior side yard setback is 3.6 meters, and therefore the 50% requirement is 1.8. After the severance, the interior side yard setback will be 1.27 meters. So they're 0.53 meters short.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
They're 0.35 or 0.53?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's 0.53.
Okay, thank you. I was like, did I read that properly? Okay, good. Other questions? Nope. All right, pretty straightforward then. Okay. On my speakers list, what do we got? Okay, I have no one listed as a speaker, so I'm going to make a call out to the audience. Is there anyone who would like to speak either for or against either the consent or the minor variance application? Now's your chance. You just need to raise your hand, and then our coordinators can kindly bring you into the panel side for discussion. All right, I'm not seeing anybody come forward. Okay, so with that, then I think committee members will vote separately on the consent and on the minor variance. So starting with the consent application, all those in favor? All right. For the record, the consent application is granted unanimously. And on the minor variances, all those in favor? All right, again, for the record, the application is granted unanimously. So thank you, Mr. Yelkotsi, for all of the work that you put into this, along with Ms. Clarozo, because I think there's a lot of discussion as we tried to get this right. So thank you very much for your efforts in that regard.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And you're aware of all the conditions and the requirements
Yes.
from the technical agencies, no issues?
Yes, we're aware of all of the conditions, including the site triangle, so.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Good night.
Okay. Good night. Last but not least is applications 4 and 5 for 349 and 359 Terry Fox. And I'm looking for Mr. Ireland.
Good evening, Madam Chair.
Good evening, Mr. Ireland. Have you got anyone else joining you? I know that there are a number of people on my list here.
That's right.
Support.
So yes, Greg Winters from my office is available if necessary. And
good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair.
Patrick Ferris, who is the General Counsel for KRP Properties, who are the applicant.
All right. So before we get going, we're going to, I need to read to you, as I'm sure you've figured out at this point. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies, that it was there for the prescribed number of days prior to the hearing, and that it was clearly visible and legible for the entirety of that time? Do either affirm or swear that to be true?
I affirm that to be true.
All right, perfect. So the only other order of business here is that there are a number of modifications to the notice. Have you had a chance to see those, Mr. Ireland?
No, I've suggested one modification, which I sent to the committee, but I haven't heard of any others.
All right, just a moment. Bear with me. I'm looking for, just trying to see which planner we had on this. Was it Ms. Kelly or Ms. Claroso on this one?
It's Miss Kelly, Madam Chair.
Kelly, thank you, thank you. So there are a number of changes to the wording in the various file components. So did you have a chance, Ms. Kelly, to share that with Mr. Ireland prior to the hearing?
Yes, so Mr. Ireland, it's the first part of the staff report. There are crossed out sections that are from the notice, and then the recommended revisions are in bold. They're mainly technical. There was just some missing words such as on for draft 4R, and just some other revisions to provide some clarity, I think, to the proposal.
Okay. Absolutely, I've seen those.
Okay.
Now that I know what you're talking about, yes.
All right, so in that case, the only one I want to really confirm with you actually is the second from last, which deals with file B00200 for 349 Terry Fox. And it's really the reference to the parts. Just want to make sure that in fact, we're saying parts 8 and 11 on 4R 12934. Can you confirm that for me?
Yes, I can confirm that is.
Those are the right parts.
That is the correct, yes.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Otherwise, I think for the record, we can adopt then the modifications as proposed by Ms. Kelly and reviewed and accepted by Mr. Ireland as essentially an aggregate bundle rather than go through each and every one of them. So if that's satisfactory to everyone, we can move on then to the application. And in this case, Mr. Ireland, we're looking for a presentation from you. So if you could present both the consent application and the minor variance application for us, that would be appreciated.
Okay, certainly. I don't have a specific visual presentation because everything I need is with the committee. I guess there's information that can be shared. But I can certainly introduce the applications and explain them. So to start with the consent applications, we're essentially creating a new parcel which will be used for a 30-story apartment building, although that is technically separate from what we're applying for here, but that's the reason for what we're applying for. So the consent is to sever parts 1, 2, 3, and 4, I believe, off what is currently 359 Terry Fox Drive.
So that's too small for my eyes. Maybe I'm old,
Yeah, me too.
but if we could get a zoom in on this, that would be that would actually be ideal. And then is there, like, I'm trying to see whether or not there's a better plan to use. Do you have one that is perhaps that's been submitted that shows better what it is that you're trying to illustrate? Is there...
Madam Chair, I think we should start with the draft for our reference plan for the new parcel. I think that would be a good starting point. The rest of it's really more relevant to the easements.
All right.
That works. That's
okay. Can everybody see that? I just want to make sure that the committee members are seeing this. Okay. Still hard to see, but
yeah, it's pretty tiny.
Yeah.
If you could zoom in on at least part of it to start with, the left-hand side maybe.
That's what I would recommend, Madam Chair, as we start sort of on the left-hand side. That would be Terry Fox Drive at the north end of the site, and we can kind of work our way back through. This is it's a building and a site that wraps around a lot of existing structures. The entire campus was designed this way to be sort of a planned unit development campus environment. And so this new parcel's being created over some existing parcels of land. And for finance purposes, it needed to be a separate parcel of land with its own frontage on Terry Fox Drive.
So just to continue, you've got parts, you can see there, part 1, 2, 3, and 4. are being severed from 359 Terry Fox. And to make up the rest of the new parcel, there'll be a boundary adjustment with 525 Leggett, which is over to the right-hand side, and it's part 5 on that plan, essentially the rest of the new parcel.
So the dividing line is where exactly? So where I'm seeing part 16, so is it that line that's between where I'm seeing part 4 and part 3?
It's, if you can see 4R17106, just written vertically, just a bit further to the right. You can see the arrows to that line is I can't point to the screen, unfortunately, but
maybe we can zoom out just a little bit, Ms. Nguyen. All right, so just explain to us again, what part of this is just, so you've got development already on what I'm seeing on the right-hand side of your plan.
correct. So the new parcel has no buildings on it, but it does have a surface parking lot.
Okay.
And Madam Chair, with the variance application, there was a site plan that was filed that might be helpful to give some relevant context to this as well.
Okay.
We might be able to start with that to be able to orient ourselves with some of the existing buildings and then the proposed structure, and then we can flip back maybe to that plan to kind of help orient on the parts.
Well, you have a very good figure in your report, your planning report, which is figure 4, which at least gives us the context, but I'm not sure if we've got it.
That's the site plan.
All right. Well, maybe that works.
So this is helpful because it's at least the same orientation that the plan you were just looking at. And the new property line that's going to be created is in red around this plan. So that's the starting point. And if it's unfortunate that the other one doesn't show up as clearly as it should on digital screens, but the property line is basically that same, well, it is the same as this red line that's shown on this drawing. So there's an existing drive aisle that leads into the apartment building. And so we're repurposing that same drive aisle to provide access to this new site plan now. And then the easements are respecting some existing easements because there's existing services and pipes that run through this entire area. So in this case, the building wraps around an existing former industrial building that fronts onto Terry Fox Drive, which is 359 Terry Fox Drive. So you can see it shadowed on this building, on this plan with the hatch marks underneath it. Thank you very much. And then behind that to the right is a 5-story existing parking structure. And this new apartment building wraps around that parking structure and then ties into the actual physical structure of the Brook Street Hotel. There's a conference facility that was site plan approved in 2018. And this building is actually going to tie physically into that structure when it's constructed. And to the north of this plan, well, which is the north on this side, it's actually to the east of this site is 2 existing stormwater management facilities. And so the building forms this long, narrow strip, or the building lot forms this long, narrow strip that goes in and then wraps around the 5-story parking structure. And in some cases, there's going to be a 0 lot line because the building's going to butt right up against the existing Brook Street conference facility. And then there's a separation between the parking garage and the hotel, the apartment building itself for building code purposes. So that's all been addressed through the site plan application that's been submitted to the city.
Okay, thank you. From the members of the panel, any questions? Like, would you like to see any other graphics or visuals on this? No? All right. Any additional information, Mr. Ireland, that you would like to present to us?
No, I don't have anything additional. I mean, I can explain the minor variance. I mean, I think that's fairly self-explanatory. The current zoning requires 45-meter lot width, whereas this new parcel will be narrower than that, it's 17.5 meters. And then we're also providing easements for an existing stormwater pipe, which runs over a number of properties, effectively upstream of us. That pipe is existing, but there is no easement over it at this point. So we're essentially formalizing that. But to be honest, that is in a nutshell the applications, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
And just to add, Madam Chair, on this, this is a long history of development. This was an area that was evolving very, very quickly in the early 2000s when the high tech was booming. And so I actually probably cut my teeth at the Committee of Adjustment for the former City of Canada with numerous applications for severance and lot line adjustments and such and easements in order to create all these parcels and glue it together. We couldn't do things fast enough because everybody was building buildings so quickly. But there is some legacy that's resulted of this. And Wesley Clover International owns all these parcels, even though they're separate pins on plans. But in the development of this plan, we recognize that there's a bunch of these existing storm services and such that run through the properties that were never properly identified or through easements. And so we thought this was an opportunity to present to the committee to clean up some of that historical legacy that wasn't done 20 years ago.
Okay, thank you. That's good to have that background.
You're welcome.
Mr. Hindle, you have questions?
Sure, thanks. So I guess Mr. Winters then, or Mr. Island, it seems to me like we don't have a single clean draft R plan, in part because, as you mentioned, there's a lot of history, there's a lot of existing I noticed a lot of already registered plans that we're taking parts from to kind of stitch together into what is this new parcel. So I think that's been explained. Could you just walk me through briefly kind of what, similar to the baseline application, kind of what the concern was about the easements and how that's been resolved?
Mr. Winters, so you're looking for an answer from Mr. Winters or Mr. Ireland?
Maybe. Well,
either's fine, yeah.
Somebody. The initial concern from, I guess, city staff was that we are using existing parts on existing legal plans. But that is the best way for us to do this. It provides a little bit of flexibility. It's also impractical to stake out new parts, especially as this is essentially almost under construction. There'll be a big hole in the ground. We provided information to the city's engineering staff about the as-builts for this stormwater service. Obviously, we are in a position to have as-builts because it's existing. So they cross-referenced it with the parts we're describing, and they're satisfied that they are accurate, that they cover the required easements. They're bigger than they need to be, but I don't see that as an issue.
So, Madam Chair, what we chose to do is there is a new reference plan to answer Mr. Hindle's question. There is a new reference plan to describe the new parcel that we're creating, and subsequently we were able to create new parts to describe the new easements that are required or to re-describe existing easements that are registered over that property. For instance, there's a hydro easement and such. So those are being re-described on the new draft 4R plan. But because this is a campus and everything out there has a parking space on it or a drive aisle or something on it, and some of it's going to be very soon to be under construction, it was seen to be wiser to re-describe some of the parts from the existing legal rather than going through the expense of hiring a surveyor to just a little bit more narrowly define some of these sewer alignments, pound a bunch of iron aground, spend all the expense registering a plan only to have all the bars torn out 10 minutes later as they construct a 2-story underground parking garage. So in consultation with city staff, it came to an agreement that we could easily do this by using the existing legal that was legacy on the site.
All right. Mr. Hindle, any follow-on questions?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Anyone else from the panel have any questions? All right. Well, I guess it's we can go to the public portion then. Don't believe we've got anyone. No, we don't. So I'm going to make a call out to anyone who's still with us and who has an interest in this application. If you would like to ask questions or provide any comments, concerns to the panel, now is your chance. Just need to raise your hand. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody come forward. So with that, then we can go to a vote. But before we get there, there's a number of conditions that are raised. And I just want to go to those because I think there was a couple of things that we wanted to maybe talk with you about. Yes, we do. So there's 3 conditions right now that are being applied. We would like to add one that is missing, which is a one-time conveyance condition, which we typically provide or we add to these types of consents applications where we have something where there's creation of a lot through provision of essentially lot line adjustments. In this case, it's 2 other lots creating one, if I understand that correctly. And so this particular condition then is now pretty typical on those kinds of applications. Mm-hmm. You've probably seen this before, just in a different place. So we're going to propose that we add this as condition number 4. Any concerns? Mr. Ireland, Mr. Winters?
No, Madam Chair. I was in front of the panel 3 this morning for a lot line adjustment. I saw this exact same condition. So it's reasonable to impose it because we are creating a parcel of land at the back that's going to be added to a new parcel being created. So this is entirely consistent. We accept it.
Excellent. So then we had a lot of debate about a 5th condition that we thought we would add, and it really has to do with the requirements of the MVCA. So the MVCA has provided some comments with regards to the need for cut and balance permit, as well as an as-built survey. Now, we didn't get them officially did we get them officially? Maybe we did, but we haven't imposed them here as conditions because we understand them to be part and parcel of the requirements that would otherwise be requested and need to be submitted as part of one of their own permit processes. So is that your understanding? Mr. Winters, have you had a discussion with the MVCA and what have they told you about this?
We have, Madam Chair. So this came up during the site plan process and also during the rezoning application as to whether or not, at what point in time it's appropriate to deal with this. And we had a meeting with Erica Ogden, who is a representative of the Conservation Authority, as well as Molly Smith, who's the planner on the file. And it was agreed that we were going to let that run through as a condition of the site plan approval. You can't construct the building unless you actually do that permit application. We've satisfied the Conservation Authority with respect to the technical requirements of that condition. The only thing that's outstanding is actually filing the permit. So we're fully anticipating that will be a condition of the site plan approval in the DR report, the development approval report that's being prepared by Molly Smith today.
Excellent. Okay, just as long as we have cover off on that, because when we do get these kinds of comments from our technical agencies, we try not to have those comments drop off the table without some explanation or resolution in some way. So, okay, so thank you for that. So I believe we're probably at the point where we can make our votes. So on the consent application, including the conditions as revised, all those in favor? Okay. For the record, the consent application is unanimously granted. On the minor variance application, all those in favor? All right. Again, for the record, the application is unanimously granted. So with that, I think that brings us to all we need to know about your application. So we're going to wish you good luck with, you've got a lot of irons in the fire from a planning application standpoint. So good luck with all that.
Thank you,
and
thank you.
Great. So have a great evening, folks. And that, I believe, is that the end of our agenda? I believe it is. The rest were our adjournments. We've dealt with those. So I do need a motion to adjourn. I was going to say no takers because we're slow on that one. So moved by Mr. White and then seconded by Ms. Markovich. So with that, then I'd like to